21 Pilots are known not just for their genre blending music, but for the intricate lore woven through their albums. From the Blurryface era's introduction of a shadowy alter ego to the fully fleshed out universe of Trench and Scaled and Icy, the band has created a narrative rich with symbols, characters, and themes that mirror real world cult dynamics. So, today we're going to dive into this recurring lore and thematic content across the duo's full discography and examine how their lyrics and world building actually does resemble very true cult like ideologies and structures. We'll explore how Tyler Joseph, the lead vocalist lyricist, and Josh Dunn, the drummer, use allegory and storytelling through characters like Blurryface and Clancy, and locales like the dystopian city of Dema to echo psychological and sociological elements common in cults. This should be a fun one since we've been covering a lot of dark stuff on my channel, so please sit back, relax, and take maybe not such a deep breath. It's time to let the fresh air in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. My name is Erin, and I am fascinated by all things cults, true crime, and unique spiritual practices. I post between 2 and 3 videos every single week on one of these topics, and usually we cover real cults and real true crime stories. But I thought it would be fun in the spirit of Halloween weekend to just kind of dive into something a little more creative, a little more artsy. I recently went to a 21 Pilots show. My husband is a huge fan, and I'm a fan too, just definitely not on his level. And I know 21 Pilots has been so inspiring to him. And when we saw this show recently, I was really struck by all of the culty themes and how they're using their artistic platform to not only discuss mental health issues, but also to share themes of what it looks like being inside a cult and it being so difficult to get out. So I thought this would be a really fun deep dive to do on my channel. It's a little more lighthearted, but it will still be very educational. So I hope you are ready. I hope you're excited. And with all of that, let's dive in. So, to start, in case you're not aware, we're going to summarize the lore spanning 21 Pilots albums. Unlike many bands, 21 Pilots have developed an ongoing narrative across multiple records. This narrative, often delivered through concept albums and cryptic online posts, centers on a fictional city called Dema, the 9 bishops who rule it, a resistance movement called the Banditos, and the journey of a protagonist figure known as Clancy, closely tied to Tyler Joseph's own psyche in the story. So in 2015, we have the album Blurryface. Blurryface is a character embodying Tyler's depression, anxiety, and insecurities. Tyler would appear with black paint on his neck and hands to signify Blurryface's presence. While on the surface, Blurryface is a personal metaphor, this album subtly lays the groundwork for the later lore. The name Blurryface and other cryptic references foreshadow the bishops of Dema. For example, the fans discovered the bishops' names that were hidden in the album's lyrics. Blurryface, the character, can be seen as the first villain of the narrative, an inner demon who later becomes personified as a cult leader in this lore. So in 2018, we have my personal favorite album, Trench. And this album fully establishes the world of Dema. We learn that Dema is a bleak, walled city ruled by 9 corrupt bishops who enforce a sinister religion called Vialism. In Dema, it's taught that everyone's purpose in life is to take their own life, which is deemed the only route to salvation or paradise. The bishops, led by one named Nico, later revealed to be Blurryface's physical form in this universe, maintain iron control over citizens, suppressing any hope or dissent. Meanwhile, an underground group of rebels called the Banditos operate in the wilderness outside Dema, which is a region referred to as Trench. The Banditos wear distinctive yellow bandanas and tape and aim to help people escape Dema's grasp. The character Clancy is introduced via cryptic letters and journal entries on a website, dmaorg.info, portraying a resident of Dema who becomes disillusioned with its teachings and attempts to escape. Trench's songs and music videos depict key story beats. For example, in Jumpsuit, we see Tyler as Clancy fleeing through a trench while a bishop on horseback pursues him, symbolizing the cult's enforcers retrieving an escaping member. In Nico and the Niners, the lyrics themselves contain reverse messages like "We denounce Vialism" and "You will leave Dema and head true east." This is effectively the Bandito anthem of rebellion and escape. Then in 2021, the band releases Scaled and Icy. At first listen, this album has a brighter, poppier sound than its predecessors, but lore wise, it serves a darker purpose: propaganda. In the story, Clancy's attempted escape failed. He was recaptured by the bishops. According to the lore, Scaled and Icy is essentially propaganda that Clancy was forced to write while in captivity. And even the title hints at this. Scaled and Icy is an anagram for Clancy is dead, as fans noted, suggesting Clancy's voice was co opted. The cheery, escapist tone of songs like Good Day and Saturday bellies an oppressive subtext. For example, the track No Chances features an ominous group chat, quote, "We come for you, no chances," unquote, which is understood as the bishop's collective voice hunting down defectors. And indeed, the bishop's hijacking the narrative is reflected in the album's promotional aesthetic, a faux, upbeat, pastel colored style, as seen in the live streamed Scaled and Icy experience, that feels like Dema's state media is trying to cover up its grim reality. In short, Scaled and Icy portrays how a cult authority might reassert control through disinformation and forced smiles, a musical case of smile or else. Now, in 2024, the band releases Clancy. Clancy was billed as the final chapter in an ambitious multi album narrative, tying together the lore from Blurryface and onward. Here, the story reaches a climax. Based on official sources and early reviews, Clancy depicts the protagonist finally escaping Dema's grip for good and returning to liberate others. In the build up to this album, the band released more lore content, letters, and short films showing Clancy organizing a full scale rebellion. Now, without spoiling every single detail, Clancy brings resolution. The oppressive regime of the bishops is challenged, and hope stands a chance to prevail. The lore's endgame has poignant implications, warning that even after escaping a cult, one must be careful not to become the next tyrant, as some letters caution against replacing one form of tyranny with another. This self awareness in the narrative kind of hints to 21 Pilots' depth. They're not glorifying a simple hero versus villain tale, but examining the cycle of control and the purity of resistance. Now, 21 Pilots did something really, really smart with their current tour. They dropped a brand new album called Breach this year, mid tour. So, although when they were selling the tour and when they dropped Clancy, they were basically like, this is the end, the story is going to be complete now. The concert kind of leaves you with a cliffhanger of sorts. The story is certainly not over yet. We do see it continue in Breach. So now we're going to talk about the death cult. At the heart of 21 Pilots lore is Vialism, the dystopian religion imposed by Dema's rulers. Vialism is a belief system as dark as it is fanatical. It teaches that the end goal of life is to unalive yourself, that self-destruction is the only path to true paradise. And we've seen this in other cults where suffering or causing others to suffer is the only means to enlightenment. But Dema's citizens are taught to embrace the bland despair of their lives with the promise that death will liberate them. This is a fictional creed, yet it bears an eerie resemblance to real-world cult ideologies, especially those classified as apocalyptic or unaliving cults. I mean, Heaven's Gate comes to mind. Heaven's Gate was a UFO religious group led by Marshall Applewhite, which in 1997 became known for the mass unaliving of 39 members. Their doctrine mixed science fiction with ascetic spirituality, and most chillingly, they believed that by exiting their human vehicles at precisely a chosen time, their souls would board an extraterrestrial spacecraft trailing the Hale Bopp comet. This is strikingly similar to Vialism's claim that unaliving is the only route to paradise. Both in lore and reality, we see a cult of despair repackaging death as a glorious release. The Blurryface album track Neon Gravestones offers a critique that resonates here. In it, Tyler sings about society's tendency to glorify early death, and it pointedly refuses to succumb to that narrative, saying, quote, "Promise me this, if I lose myself, you won't mourn a day, and you'll move on to someone else," unquote. Within the lore context, neon gravestones are literally depicted in Dema, glowing tombstones lining the city's perimeter, serving as grim monuments to those who attained the, quote, glorious end. This imagery evokes real cult memorials. For example, the plaque in Jonestown that read, "Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it, beneath the altar where a poison was mixed." A morbid irony as Jim Jones exhorted hundreds of people to lay down your lives for a better life beyond. In Trench, the song Nico and the Niners directly encourages save your razor blades now, not yet, effectively telling listeners and the character Clancy not to give in to the self-harm cult doctrine, not to drink the Kool-Aid just because the bishops say so. This is a subversion of Vialism's edict, much like a deprogrammer tells a would-be Heaven's Gate member that the spaceship is not coming. In Trench lore, the annual assemblage of the glorified is disturbingly similar to the night of the massacre in Jonestown. Only the most obedient citizens, the glorified, are invited to this gathering, where they then become the glorious gone. In other words, they die for the cause. It's a mass sacrifice portrayed as an honor. The Nico and the Niners music video references this event, and the lore reveals it was exploited by the Banditos as an opportunity to rescue Clancy during the chaos. But the concept alone, a ceremony of unaliving under leadership's direction, mirrors Jonestown's final act and Heaven Gate's exit. It plays into this core cult theme, the doctrine of a promised utopia that is only achieved through extreme self-harm or self-annihilation. In all cases, a charismatic authority validates and sanctifies death, flipping the survival instinct on its head. It's also worth noting that 21 Pilots approach this theme with critique and compassion. Tyler Joseph, through lyrics and interviews, has been open about struggling with dark thoughts and observing the troubling glorification of tragedy in media. By embedding an unaliving cult into his music's mythology, he creates a bold metaphor for mental illness, depression as a cult leader in one's mind, convincing you that you'd be better off dead. Songs like Leave the City on Trench emphasize the will to stay alive, even when escape or recovery feels distant. Quote, "They know that it's almost over. In time, I will leave the city. For now, I will stay alive," unquote. This is essentially an anti-cult message of hope and endurance, the antidote to Vialism. And I don't want to gloss over the theme that's almost a partner to this. Not only are there inherent themes of true cult practices and leadership, there's also this theme of a voice inside your head that can be detrimental to your health. So I just really admire this band for kind of interweaving this folklore into their music that has double meaning, triple meaning. It's such a smart way to create art. It really, really is inspiring. Vialism in the 21 Pilots universe functions as a stylized death cult, reflecting and condemning the way real cults can brainwash members into embracing their own end. So whether it's Heaven's Gate's promise of an alien salvation or the Jonestown nightmare of revolutionary unaliving, the band's lore captures that unsettling dynamic, where devotion is measured by one's willingness to die. It's a theme that provides some of the heaviest emotional punches in their discography, grounding the fantastical elements of the story in a very real psychological terror. Now, every cult narrative needs its oppressive authority figures, and in the world of 21 Pilots, those are the bishops of Dema. The 9 bishops, led by Nico, aka Blurryface, collectively serve as the charismatic and authoritarian leaders of this fictional cult. They personify various facets of control, from psychological manipulation to brute force, and their rule over Dema exhibits classic cult mechanisms of isolation, information control, and enforcement of obedience. Dema is described as a walled city, cut off from the outside world by high barriers. Citizens are made to believe that beyond those walls lies nothing but wasteland or false promises. In fact, the bishops actively suppress knowledge of Trench, the free lands beyond, and dismiss the Banditos as a myth or a boogeyman story to keep people in fear of leaving. And this mirrors how real cults isolate members. If we continue to use the Jim Jones comparison, he moved his flock to the remote jungles of Guyana specifically to sever their contact with outsiders and media, making him the sole source of truth. And as for Heaven's Gate members, they lived reclusively in San Diego, in this massive mansion, totally cut off from family. They even had to break all sexual bonds and many personal ties to focus on the group's doctrine. In Dema's case, the only community allowed is the one under the bishop's eye. And everyone wears the same drab clothing, gray and black uniforms, with no visible individuality. A tactic very common to high demand, high control groups that often encourage uniform dress or lifestyles to erase personal identity. You may have heard the Children of God cult, for example, which renamed members and dictated their attire. Some cults, like certain monastic sects, require identical clothing as a sign of commitment. 21 Pilots visualize this in performances. Tyler has appeared in prisoner like orange jumpsuits or in gray, lifeless attire when in character as a Dema resident, versus wearing the vibrant yellow of the Banditos when representing rebellion. It's a visual storytelling of isolation versus freedom. Cults maintain power by controlling the narrative, and Scaled and Icy is a meta example of this within 21 Pilots lore. As noted, Scaled and Icy was essentially written in universe by the bishops through a captive Clancy as a propaganda piece. It was a sugar-coated album to pacify the populace. Lyrics from that album carry double meanings. For instance, Never Take It critiques the spread of misinformation and media spin. Quote, they're trying hard to weaponize you, you and I, unquote, could be read as commentary on the propaganda. The song Redecorate, while inspired by a real story of holding on to a lost loved one's room, in lore context, it could symbolize how the bishops redecorate the truth, painting over ugliness with more palatable lies. A very concrete example comes from the lore website. When the bishops discovered Clancy's rebellious letters leaking, they shut down the site with an account terminated notice, stating the user violated terms established by the sacred municipality of Dema, and warning that anyone sharing contraband, anti-Dema information, for example, would be prosecuted. The termination code they left even hid a secret message: Clancy is dead, to demoralize readers. And this echoes more real life scenarios. Many cults strictly censor outside information and demand members distrust any negative reports about the group. Scientology, for example, labels critical media as biased, suppressive content. Nexium taught members that those who questioned the group were enemies of their self improvement and banned consumption of any critical material. In Dema, the populace's only news comes from the bishops, a scenario reminiscent of North Korea's information environment or the Stalinist cult of personality. Now, these are extreme examples where the state slash cult and cult leader dictate all the truth. Donald Trump trying to take over TikTok and make it basically a MAGA platform comes to mind. 21 Pilots illustrate this with a satirical flair. The Scaled and Icy livestream concert had moments of the band appearing as smiling puppets on a propaganda TV show, complete with canned applause, while dark figures lurked behind, a scene practically lifted from Orwell, but packaged in pastel colors. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how cults use fear as a way to control. In Trench, the song Nico and the Niners has the rallying cry, Dema don't control us, implying, of course, that Dema does try to control every aspect of life. The bishops enforce vialism and obedience through both psychological and physical means. Each bishop is assigned to monitor a group of citizens, and if someone attempts to escape, their sector's bishop will personally hunt them down and bring them back. We see this in the jumpsuit music video. A bishop, implied to be Nico, chases Tyler/Clancy and at one point grips him by the throat, a very visual metaphor for the chokehold of the cult. In lore, Clancy manages to briefly convince Nico to let him see the outside world, only to sabotage the bishop's vehicle and run. Yet Nico recaptures him later, showing the near inescapable reach of the cult's enforcers. This dynamic is akin to accounts from certain cults where defectors are actively pursued or harmed. For example, Jonestown had armed guards, known as the Red Brigade, who patrolled the compound and chased down members who tried to flee into the jungle. In the Manson family, those who wavered in loyalty risked being the next murder victim. Fear kept people obedient. Modern extremist cults sometimes hire bounty hunters or place legal threats to retrieve or silence ex members. The phrase no chances in 21 Pilots' song of the same name encapsulates the bishop's stance toward leaving. We come for you, no chances. There is zero tolerance for apostasy. In one of Clancy's published letters, a chilling decree reads, quote, all enemies of Vialism and its teachings will be brought to swift justice. The honorable bishops of the sacred municipality of Dema. Now, this could easily be a line out of a totalitarian regime's manifesto or a cult leader's ominous sermon about detractors. It shows how the bishops cultivate fear to prevent defiance. Now, while the bishops as a group represent authoritarian control, Nico, or Blurryface, deserves a special mention as the charismatic cult leader figure. Within the lore, Nico is effectively immortal in a parasitic way. He can possess the bodies of the glorious gone, who die by vialism, using them as vessels. This makes him a literal spirit that needs followers to sacrifice themselves for his continued power. It's a chilling twist on the idea of followers feeding the leader's ego in real cults. Nico's name, very notably, was inspired by Nicholas Bourbaki, a pseudonymous collection of mathematicians. It's an esoteric reference which Tyler wove into the lyrics of Morph. Quote, he'll always try to stop me, that Nicholas Bourbaki. Fans deciphered that Nico was Blurryface, meaning the very personal demon from the Blurryface album is now dressed as a high priest of Dema. In terms of persona, Nico is depicted as cunning, soft-spoken, yet menacing. He calls himself Blurryface, the head bishop, implying that he is well aware of his role as Tyler's internal adversary too. In real cults, leaders often adopt grandiose titles and alternate names, like Marshall Applewhite took the name Doe in Heaven's Gate, Jim Jones was called Father or even self-identified with biblical prophets, Keith Raniere was called Vanguard in Nexium. Like these, Nico in Blurryface is more title than personal name. He symbolizes an idea of fear and control. Charismatic cult leaders also tend to instill devotion by a mix of allure and terror. The ABC News description of Charles Manson could well describe Blurryface's hold on Tyler's psyche. A vicious Svengali, a creepy messiah, with an aura that drew lost kids in. Manson's followers testified to his hypnotic, repetitive lectures and how he zeroed in on their weaknesses to try to manipulate them. In 21 Pilots' song Doubt from Blurryface, Tyler pleads, don't forget about me. Even when I doubt you, I'm no good without you. A line that can be interpreted as the voice of someone terrified of losing his oppressive mentor, akin to a trauma bond with one's manipulator. This desperate dependence is a hallmark of cult psychology, where followers come to believe they literally need the leader to survive or have purpose. Tyler has explained in interviews that Blurryface represents the voice that tears him down. Yet in doubt, he paradoxically clings to it. That paradox is the essence of cult influence. The leader who causes pain also convinces you that he's the cure. It's similar to victims of abuse feeling like they cannot leave their abuser, a mix of fear and false comfort. In the narrative, even after Clancy escapes to the free land, he admits feeling strangely homesick for Dema. This detail reveals the psychological pull of the familiar oppression, comparable to how long term cult members struggle with trauma bonding and sometimes return to their group because the outside world just feels so overwhelming. Clancy's moment of identifying Dema as a home is a poignant narrative moment that underscores how indoctrination can rewrite one's instincts. In cult studies, this relates to identity reforming. And indeed, psychologists note that cults often suppress the real self and build a new identity controlled by the cult leader. Dema had, for a time, rewritten Clancy's sense of belonging. Tyler's ability to weave such nuance into a fictional story is part of why fans find the lore so compelling. It's not just fantasy, it's revealing truth about the human mind. In cult comparisons for authority and control, we can list numerous examples. Scientology's practice of disconnection, isolating members from dissenting family. Nexium's master slave hierarchy, where women were branded with the leader's initials as a sign of submission. Or the FLDS Church, Warren Jeff's polygamous sect, where a single leader dictates every marriage, every daily choice of the followers. 21 Pilots condense these broad patterns into the figure of the bishops and the conditions in Dema. By doing so, they create a villain that is not only narratively intense, but thematically rich, and listeners can relate Dema's oppression to many forms of real world tyranny, whether it's a cult, an abusive relationship, or even one's own mental health struggles. Dema's authority structure, with its walls, propaganda, hunts for escapees, and fearsome leader, serves as a mirror to how cults control and isolate. Songs like Nico and the Niners are anthems of defiance directly addressing these powers. And the whole Trench album is, in a sense, a study in breaking free from an authoritarian nightmare. Now, in contrast to Demo's darkness, stands Trench, both the album and the fictional realm representing freedom. The Banditos, rebels donning yellow, symbolize the hope, courage, and community needed to overthrow cultic control. If the bishops reflect the cult leaders and enforcers we've discussed, the Banditos and the character Clancy reflect the members turned resistors, analogous to ex cult members who fight back or help others escape. This part of the lore resonates strongly with themes of charisma of the rescuer, utopia versus dystopia, and the psychology of escape from indoctrination. Cults often dangle this idea of a utopia to their members. The People's Temple promised a harmonious socialist paradise in the jungle. Nexium marketed itself as a pathway to personal perfection. And the Manson family envisioned a post apocalyptic Eden where they'd rule. In 21 Pilots lore, Dema is a dystopia disguised as the only reality, whereas Trench, the outside world, is not exactly a ready made utopia, but a realm of possibility, freedom, and uncertainty. In short, reality with all its challenges, but also all its hope. A Clancy letter described Trench as a place between two other places, the unknown and the place you don't want to be. It's a metaphor for the middle ground of becoming aware that where you are is not benefiting you, and using Trench to move forward. This nuanced view of freedom acknowledges that escaping a cult or oppressive system is only the start of a journey, not an instant paradise. In the song Bandito, Tyler sings, I know that I'm a vandal. I can take the high road because I'm wearing a bandito cloak. The high road suggests a moral high ground or the hard path of resistance, as opposed to the low, easy road of compliance. In taking that road, the banditos endure hardship. They live in trenches, literal and figurative, but keep the flame of utopian hope alive. The fan favorite lyric, Where we're from, there's no sun, from Bandito, paints the Banditos' environment as dark. They operate in shadows, yet they carry light in the form of torches and neon yellow flare. This is the classic imagery of light versus dark, reminiscent of many religions and literary rebellions. Now, a healthy community is often what cults pretend to offer, but ultimately pervert. In Dema, community is a hollow concept. People attend the same rituals and march in the same line, but true camaraderie is absent because everybody is isolated by fear. By contrast, the Banditos highlight solidarity. They greet each other with the call and response, East is up, a phrase that in lore means orienting one's self towards escape or east towards trench. In concerts, fans chant East is up together, blurring the line between the fictional rebellion and the real fan base unity. This call evokes how members of secret resistance or even persecuted religions use code phrases. It also ties into cult because many cults supplant members' previous family and friends with a new family, like Jim Jones called his congregation a family. Manson's group literally took the family on as their moniker. The difference is in authenticity. A cult family only loves you if you obey, whereas the Banditos family is built on mutual trust and the shared goal of liberation. And indeed, the Banditos are explicitly stated to be a metaphor for Tyler's real loved ones, friends, and family who give him hope and reasons to live. In a psychological sense, they represent the support system or positive influence that counters depression. Think of the deprogrammers and support networks for former cult members. In the 70s and 80s, cult deprogramming often involved families hiring experts to physically and mentally pull someone out of a cult mindset. It's a controversial practice, yes, but it's sometimes necessary to use outside force or community to break the spell. In more modern, gentler times, exit counseling and ex member peer support groups provide escapees with a new sense of belonging to replace the cult community. The Banditos function like those counselors or supportive friends, whispering to Dema's citizens that you're not alone and the way out is real. In fact, in the video for Nico and the Niners, Banditos covertly slipped yellow flower petals to certain citizens, a sign that they're not alone and that escape is possible. This is analogous to how anti cult activists sometimes secretly communicate with current cult members. There are stories of slipping notes or subtle messages to let them know that help is available if they want it. Now, in the final chapters of the lore, post Scaled and Icy, and in the Clancy album, Clancy transforms from escapee to leader of the rebellion. He broadcasts messages to Dema's citizens, encouraging them to rise up. Interestingly, some lore pieces hint at the ambivalence or danger of Clancy becoming a leader. After the bishops were defeated, citizens expressed concern. More power, even if it's Clancy's power, will corrupt the movement. We are all one people striving for hope, not more tyranny. Clancy must know that. This self awareness is profound. It's as if the story is cautioning that even a liberation movement can turn into a cult of personality if not careful. And history has seen such patterns. The French Revolution's leaders ended as autocrats, or in some cases, a revolutionary turned leader might become the very thing that they hated, just like Orwell allegorized in Animal Farm. By including this, 21 Pilots' narrative remains very nuanced. Resistance isn't about creating a new idol. It's about empowering everyone. Clancy's arc, therefore, is not to become the new Nico, but to eliminate the need for any Nico. From a fan perspective, many see Clancy as an extension or facet of Tyler Joseph himself, an avatar through which he tells his grand story about mental health and freedom. The name Clancy was never explained outright by the band initially, leading to much speculation. Fans noted that Clancy means red warrior in Irish, which is fitting as he fights the red-robed bishops. But now with the album Clancy, it's clear that Tyler fully embraced this character as a storytelling device. In interviews, he has sometimes spoken about these themes in less narrative terms. For instance, how fame and industry pressure felt like a city he was trapped in, or how the color symbolism helped him overcome stage fright and anxiety by externalizing those feelings. So Clancy is kind of part autobiographical and part archetype. And as for their newest album, Breach, well, people are still trying to peel back the layers of the symbolism there. So maybe at the end of the year, I'll pull out a part 2 to this video and maybe I'll hear some of your theories down in the comments below if you're a 21 Pilots fan. But I think it's very clear that the Banditos and Clancy represent the antidote to cults, which is human connection. It's truth-telling, it's bravery, and it's hope. They illuminate themes of empowerment that even in the face of an all-encompassing system, there is a way out of it if people work together and keep the flame of truth alive. 21 Pilots don't paint the fight to be easy. It's depicted as dangerous and costly. This honesty gives the story gravity. It's sacrifice. It's speaking up when you're terrified. So, if you're a fan of 21 Pilots, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this analysis of the discography and the mythology and the lore throughout it. I know there's a lot more that we could get into, especially in regard to the mental health aspects, but my channel focuses predominantly on cults. But if you want to share any of your theories, any of your insight, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I think it is so incredible to use art as a tool, not just to express yourself and make discussing mental health more common, but also kind of teaching younger people about the dangerous tactics that cults and their leaders use. 21 Pilots has such a broad and diverse fan base. I mean, when we went to the show, we kind of felt out of place because we were like, oh my gosh, there's teenagers here. And it's just so cool that their music is resonating to so many young people who could be targeted by cults. I feel like it's always people who are kind of thrust out into adult life with no clear direction that are typically prime prey for cults and cult leaders. So it's so, so, so cool that so many younger people are being educated through song and through lyrics and through art to understand this dynamic a little more. It's really, really cool to see. Anyways, I hope you guys liked today's video. I know it's a little bit different than what I normally do, but we will be back with more of the insidious stories next week. I hope you found this educational and hopefully entertaining, and maybe you just discovered a new band to listen to and you'll just listen through their entire discography. So I want to say thank you guys all so much for watching this video today, for supporting my channel, and for just being wonderful altogether. It is Halloween weekend when this video releases, so please, please, please be extra safe out there. Ask questions, and of course, always stay skeptical. I will see y'all in my next video very soon. Thanks again. Bye.